You know, right.
Do you get any breaks towards the holiday? Do you limit your
This one was the
I
Who
meant
wants to go home early?
Not with this agenda. No, it's
nice now?
I used to do that on December agenda.
I know. Sorry, guys.
I think someone's vacation should be recalled.
Already approved.
Okay. 7:01, I would like to call the December 13th meeting of the Winchester Board of Education to order. And as usual, we will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance.
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And Jeanette, can you start us off with the roll, please?
Sure. Jeanette Broder.
Tara Sunday. Renee Waldron.
Nora Mukarski.
Doug Fenninger.
Melanie Brady Shanley.
Tori Lavetri.
Cheryl McGlynn.
Kristen Peterson.
Thank you all. So we have just one absence this evening. I know Sandra's not feeling well, so she won't be with us. Agenda review, is there anything we need to add? Yes, please.
Please no. I just need to add, if you would please make a motion to accept the grant amount of $3,000 from the Northwest Community Foundation for the Inchy bookworm vending machine that we wrote a grant for. We did receive it. So, and that would be under action items.
Okay, that'll be D.
And I have a second.
Okay.
One would be the removal of correspondence, letter B for the Gilbert study. That study has not been released yet. I was hoping that it was going to be ready for tonight, but it is not.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a motion to make those changes?
I'll make a motion.
Second? All in favor?
The correspondence on board, right?
Okay, good. We're 5 minutes in and 20 minutes ahead of schedule, so that's good.
Unanimous.
Unanimous. Comments from the chair? I just have one thing I would like to make sure that the public is aware of, and I think we're going to say this several more times throughout the budget process. Over, God, I don't know, how many, 2 years ago, this town approved in a referendum $10.9 million roughly for the Hinsdale School renovation.
That was the bond amount.
That was the bond amount, that would be the town's portion of the obligation to the cost to renovate Hinsdale School. The actual amount was estimated to be much higher because obviously the state contributes. But due to some changes, one being that we ended up being categorized as renovates and new, and the second being that we just got very lucky on bids, the total cost of the town is going to be about $4.2 million.
Wow.
So that's a huge difference. And so I just want to use every opportunity to let the public know as they look at our, scrutinize our budget in the months ahead, that, you know, we just saved a bunch of dough for this town.
That ended up being, that saved 58% of the total bond amount, roughly.
58%?
Yep, 5.75 million.
Wow, that's amazing. That really needs to be.
So
I
brought
think
in
that
on
would-
time and under budget.
I would suggest putting out a press release to that extent.
Once it's finalized, it won't be finalized till likely January. But once I'm sure we'll partner with the town and be able to put that out.
That'd be wonderful.
Especially in light of the construction costs and, you know, the cost of materials that you hear about, so.
All the
Absolutely.
anticipation that it was going to be
Well,
COVID
yeah, that.
increases, this, that, you know, you guys, I mean, give a lot of credit to, you know, that entire committee that worked so hard, and the contractors and the architect and everyone that worked together, recognizing how important it was not only to have this come in at budget, but to save where they could.
Good. So that concludes my comments. We can move on to presentation, state accountability results.
Yes. I'm going to invite Barb and Seamus to join me tonight.
Is that a new screen over there?
Yes.
That's nice.
Very nice.
Let's do this.
That's good for you.
Seamus, could you hit the first switch and the left switch over there? Can you see that better on the screens? Okay. So I want to introduce you to the school accountability results. These results are the combination of last year's school performance. We're going to hear about the different indicators tonight that is ranked. This is what they consider to be a holistic view of our district performance. So this is going going to range everything from chronic absenteeism, physical fitness, to growth and academic performance. You'll see a whole range of our performance indicators across our local area, our DIRG, and also going in depth at our school level.
So the School Accountability Index, what is it? So I've set of 12 indicators that provide a more holistic picture of the school and district performance. So back after No Child Left Behind, this was replaced as the new set of indicators that kind of identified how districts were doing in comparison to other districts, like Mel said, in our DIR comparison in state using our indicators. So there's a strong focus, not just on achievement, but on student growth. So we earn points based off of achievement, and we earn based off of student growth, all right? It has been in place since 2017, and it's called the Every Student Succeeds Act. Oops, sorry. Total students that we have in district is we have 550 total students in district, all right, in 2021, 2022, and that's our testing grades. So these testing grades are grades, that's our whole district, thank you, Mel. All right, thank you. It's our district reference group is G, and so that's our DIRG that Mel talked about, and so it's a combination. Mel, how many districts are in G right now?
Every single district in the state of Connecticut, we are in, they go up to DIRG I,
Right.
and we are second tier from the bottom.
And there's about 12 to 13 districts in each DIRG usually?
Up to 20, I would say, is accurate.
Okay. Our frame to reduce population is about 65%, so that's our students that are lower socioeconomic and need some additional support. And we have right around a 20% special education population. I think we're hovering right around 19.5 right now. All students, every student regardless of the need, and then the high need students are special education, EL, and free and reduced.
So just, sorry, one quick question.
And
Testing
let
grades?
us just go
Okay.
through the
All right.
presentation tonight, and then we'll take all types of questions at the end.
Okay, I'll write
If
it
you
down.
would, please.
Sure.
So there are several indicators that feed into the overall index rating, and there's a formula to calculate the total index rating. These indicators are, again, for students that are tested in grades 3 through 6, and we'll talk about some of the high school indicators as well that do not feed into Winchester Public Schools index rating. So the first indicator is achievement, and achievement is based on scale scores of student achievement in ELA, language arts, math, and science. Achievement is the percentage of students that are meeting grade level expectations or performing above grade level. So there's a percentage rating of how many students or grades 3 through 6 that have reached that achievement level. Growth, there are growth targets based on student score in prior year. Points are assigned, it's a formula that comes into play based on what we expect of each individual student. And then the growth target is the percentage of students meeting their goal. EL proficiency is the average percentage of growth target achieved based on the last LINKS assessment, which is for English language learners. And that's a percentage of students meeting expectations for that assessment that are bilingual or learning the English language. The participation is school would otherwise have been classified in category 1 or 2, has a participation rate. So we have an expectation for every district, public school district in the state. There's a percentage of students that are expected to participate. So we can't have parents opting out saying, I don't want my child to participate. We're expected to have 96% of our students participating in the assessment. Chronic absenteeism feeds into the overall index rating. So chronic absenteeism is the percentage of students missing 10% or greater of the total number of days enrolled in the school year for any reason, not, just takes into play just any absence whatsoever, even medical absences come into play here. So when the year is over, 18 absences would make a student chronically absent, because that's 10% of the school year of 180 days. And then the post-secondary preparation, readiness, graduation on track for 9th grade, 4-year adjusted cohort, graduation of these indicators fed into our index rating for this. So Pearson School and middle school and high school were all held accountable for these indicators here. Same again, academic growth for ELA, for all students, high needs students, math academic growth and high needs. And then, the EL proficiency, progress scores not reported, and then the chronic we're feeding in, bachelor is feeding into our chronic absenteeism for our overall index rating for all students and high needs students. So that's where we had some indicators from bachelor school. And then the physical fitness would be the other indicators, and then the high school indicators and physical fitness would feed into the Gilbert school.
So in looking at this data, what we want to show you is a demographic comparison between the state and our local district. So when they report scores out on us, they report one for bachelor, which just is chronic absenteeism. They report another for Pearson, because they have testing levels in there. And then there's a holistic score for us as a district. So this first slide here highlights the state versus our local Winchester as a district. And basically what it does is it takes you back pre-pandemic to post-pandemic, which is where we're at right now. The state had an overall accountability index of 69.6. We outperformed the state in this particular area by 0.8 of a point, higher at 70.4 coming out of the pandemic. And if you look back and you track this through, I wish I had a pointer to be able to show you this. You look horizontally across here and you take this 69.6 and you were to draw a straight line back, you can see that the state is 5+ years beyond their pre-pandemic performance, okay? So their line, they're way back still. If you take our line and you draw horizontally from 70.4, you can see that we're about 2 sessions back based upon our performance, which coming out of the pandemic when, there's 5+ years plus for the state average and we're only at 2, we've come out of it in a good spot. Had we not had such a hit on Hinsdale or Bachelor only having a small chronic absenteeism, had we had a strong score coming off of them, because that was their only indicator, I think we would have been even more competitive with the 79.3 that we have had in the past. So that had a great impact on us. So just to give you a comparison, because they were chronically absent at I believe it was 24 or 25% last year, they only received 2.9% of their possible 100 points. In years past, when the chronic absenteeism wasn't what it has been, they have usually received 91.3% of their average, of the 100% average. So you can see how that would have scaled up had they not had the influence of chronic absenteeism last year. So now if you break that out even further, and you take that down to the level of Pearson, which is where most of our score comes from, I want to highlight the fact that they have been doing amazing. You can see from the point of receivership, which was the 71.2, 16, 17 is where I started. You can see how we go up, and then we hit that pivotal point right before the pandemic of 80.5. We hit our stride right there, and we did come down a little bit there coming out of the pandemic, but again, we are absolutely competitive right now with our pre-pandemic work. I think chronic absenteeism right now is our pivot point. And again, Pearson well outperformed the state by 5 points when you look at our comparative accountability scores. So I want to talk to you a little bit about reading the report, because the next thing is we're going to show you Pearson's actual data in the report. So when you look at this, you have an example here. You're going to have your indicator on the far left, which is going to tell you what it is. Barb explained those. You're going to have the actual index or rate, so that's what your district scored. The amount for the target is the amount that the state sets in terms of possible, what your goal and what your target is. Then you're going to see points earned, which is the number of points you earned based upon that target, the amount of points that are possible, so for academic indicators, the max points is 50. Then you have points earned percentages, and then on the far right, you have the state's percent of points earned. So the far right is the state, and the second to the right there, that points earned percentage is our local percentage. Any questions on just kind of that quick example before we dive into the actual results? All right, so I'm gonna have Barb take you through the Pearson achievement results.
Okay, so the ELA performance index, again, is the percentage of students in grades 3 through 6 that are meeting grade level meeting or exceeding. Our index rate was 67.2, the target was 75, so we earned 44.8 points. The max would have been 50. We had percentage of 89.6% points earned compared to the state's 85.6. The ELA performance high needs students, 64.1. We earned that much out of the targeted 75, 42.8 points earned out of 50, 85.5 percentage points earned out of a total of 100% there, and the state was 72.3. So high needs is really a celebration for us here compared to the state averages. We're far exceeding the percentages of points earned compared to the state. Math, percentage of students achieving grade level for all students. We earned a total of 45 out of 50 points for a 90% points earned out of 70 compared to 78.2 in the state average. So math is a strong performance area for us. Again, performance index for our high needs in math, we earned 42 out of 50.5 out of 50 points for an 84.9 percentage points earned compared to the state's 64.6. That's over, it's 21.3% higher than the state average for high needs in math. If you think back to 2017, we were recognized as a school of distinction for our growth for our students in high needs in that category in math, and I would say this year we hammered it again in that area. Science performance also strong. We earned 47.2 out of 50 points for a 94.4 total percentage of points earned compared to the state's 81.9. Just doing great in science in the high needs. Again, 42.6 out of 50 points earned for 85.2 percentage points compared to the state's 63.6. So math and science were far exceeding. ELA is still exceeding. So fantastic comparison of our percentage points compared to the state average.
You look at the all population on the chart there. When you average all three content areas, we performed with all students at a rate of 9.4% higher than the state average. And when you look at our high needs average among science, reading, and math, you see that we're outscoring the state by 18.7% on average.
So Barb just focused on our achievement results, and I'm going to focus on our growth results. And as I said earlier, growth results actually help us a little bit more in our scoring. They're counted and weighted a little bit differently. Our academic ELA growth for all students, our points available when we scored were 61.7 out of 100% earned. Our total points were 61.7, and the state average was 60.4, so yet again above state average in growth for all students. Our academic ELA growth for our high need students, we scored 63.8% out of 100, 63.8 compared to the state average of, again, 56.2, which is exceeding state average. Academic growth for all students, we scored 78.2 out of 100, and the state average yet again, 65.2, which again, we were exceeding that average. And finally, our academic growth total, in all growth areas for our high need students, 79.4 points earned out of 100, total of 59.1 of the state average, again, far exceeding what that looks like. Again, as Mel stated, we outpace the state in every single category in that area, some of them by very large margins. On average, all students scored 7.1% higher than the state average. Our high need students, again, a whopping 13.35% higher than the state. And the area growth, as I stated, is weighted 100 points versus 75 points, as you guys noticed before. So the growth scores help us in this indicator a little bit more. So not only did we perform really well performance-wise, we did even better growth-wise, and it helped us in that area. So this is a higher level of importance placed on these scores when they're looking at this. So one thing that's really important that, you know, I think we should celebrate as a district is that when we talk about closing that achievement gap, right? It's great to go year by year to say that we're closing an achievement gap. These numbers are showing us that we're not going year by year, we're closing the gap. We're closing the gap by 1-2 years on some of our students, and we're doing this coming off of the pandemic. So I'm really proud of our teachers and our staff for this work that they did.
So chronic absenteeism, as Mel pointed out, is an area of concern for us. All students had, it's just a really tough area for us. Chronic absenteeism was significantly higher than in years past, obviously because of the pandemic. While we outperform the state in all and high needs, the results are unacceptable for us, and that's why we have many initiatives around trying to address this. This is an area we continue to improve regarding physical fitness. Do you want to speak to that, or we could look at the numbers here? So for chronic absenteeism, all students we had max points were 50. We earned 27.3 for a percentage of 54.5 versus the state's 25.1. So while we are outperforming the state, still an area of concern. Our high needs, 18.2 out of 50 points earned, 36.4% versus 0 points for the state. And then physical fitness, again, they're looking at an estimated participation rate of 99.3%. That's literally one student maybe that might not participate for whatever reason. While we performed well, we had 41.1 out of 50 total points earned for 82.1 percentage points versus the state average of 61. We feel that this is an area where we could grow a little bit and get a little closer to those targets. We have some things that we've outlined that we can focus on improving in that area.
So when you take a look at us and you do Winchester as a district and then Pearson School versus other local school districts, we always like to put this in the context of our local area. I won't go through the rank of each individual town and what their score was, but you can see Winchester highlighted in yellow, you can see the state highlighted in blue. Certainly know that we've outperformed the state as a district, and then certainly Pearson School as an individual entity has performed third highest in our local area against other DIRGs that are a lot higher on the rank order than what we are. Right now, currently in our local area, we have Litchfield Intermediate, and that was a school level, that was comparison, and Thomaston as a district that are outpacing us in our local area compared to the other listed areas there. You see, chronic absenteeism, again, has been the core indicator that has driven our performance markers down. Pre-pandemic, chronic absenteeism was around 8% for our district, which is, well below what the state average has historically been. And, just highlighting the work that's happening at Pearson School, because they are certainly coming out of the pandemic strong and performing at the top of their game, giving a more diverse population, a high population of special education students, versus other areas that would typically, if you look at it as trend data would tell you, we should be underperforming our local area. Then when you take it, you look at our DIRG, because this is the area in which we have like socioeconomic and demographic comparisons to other towns throughout the state. You see that in our DIRG-G, Winchester for Pearson has outperformed every single district that's listed there for DIRG-G. And then as a district in Winchester, we performed in third place behind Vernon and Bristol, and then the state average being the 69.6. So we want to highlight areas of celebration.
So, one of the things that was, I think, hard at the time when we're living through a pandemic is getting our kids back in school, right? There was some obstacles to that in 2020, the fall of 2020. But we kept going instructional coaching, continued co-teaching, adjusting curriculum, and monitoring the implementation of instruction. Our coaches have been instrumental in leading the teachers through all of that work. Small group focused in the classroom, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, in the classroom, out of the classroom, differentiated instruction, targeted instruction on Common Core state standards coupled with IAB practice, which is the SBAC-like tests that we can do to practice for that assessment. That's been a continuous plan in our building. Tier 1, 2, and 3 social emotional instruction, strategic programming for students with identified needs. We have the DESA ratings where that feeds into our social emotional needs. So our teachers are teaching the second step curriculum during the advisory period, and our counselors are teaching tier 2, 3 social skills and supporting our students socially, emotionally with their specific needs. Research-based instructional materials and resources, not using just worksheets and internet resources, really good quality instructional resources being implemented, and increased student engagement through after-school programming, band, chorus programs, skiing clubs, champs programs, field experiences, and tag programming for our talented and gifted students. All things that we kept going full speed ahead just to keep our students engaged and loving coming to school.
And if I could take us back a little to post-receivership and turnaround programming, right? So, the data always shows that typical performance and improvements like this take 5 to 7 years to see results. As a district, we're blowing that out of the water. We're outpacing expectation by years according to our ESSA milestones. So as you see a trajectory, it's going uphill. Where everybody else kind of has that slow curve, we are going up at a much faster pace. We're meeting our milestones at a much faster pace. Our consistent implementation for 5 years under the same curriculums, revamping our curriculum, our bridges, our reading and writing curriculum, our science now with Rachel Manzer, we're implementing our science standards. It's been amazing. You can see from our test scores how well that's working. Our recruitment of staff and our retention of staff, our professional development strategies that we're implementing. We don't go out of district for our professional development and pay for people. We do our own in-house professional development where we train our staff, we give them the resources that they need, and we encourage them to be teachers of teachers as well too, and train our staff amongst each other. We've lowered our inside and outside suspension rates. They're basically non-existent unless we absolutely have to. And our out-of-district placements, as you guys know, when I came on, we were at a very, very bad place when I came on, and we've really reduced those costs at a very fast pace by building programming, social emotional programming. And again, always, attendance is always in the back of our mind, constantly trying to do attendance initiatives. Mel brought one to the board earlier this year that we've been working on and we can continue to move forward with. And so, again, one of those areas that we definitely are leaving points on the table that we can definitely go after, and I think we'll continue to move forward with those areas.
So we know that there's areas that we can make movement on and targeted movement for this particular accountability index. So there's 3 areas right now that we're going to highlight for you that will be areas that we will focus to ensure that we get our accountability index up higher than where it currently is at and continue to improve. So Seamus is going to highlight for you growth. Barb's going to talk to you about the work that we're doing around chronic absenteeism, and I'll speak to the physical fitness work that we're doing.
All right, so to follow along with our growth goals, we're going to student goal and setting based on NWA scores. That's our district-wide assessment that we use, that we do in the spring and in the fall. And NGSS and SBAC scores, of course. Students meet individually with their teachers to routinely review their progress and set goals. These are normally teacher-driven and student-driven conversations. They meet regularly. They're great conversations. Students are part of that process. Small group instruction based on actual student performance on units or lessons. Again, continuing with our intervention model and also focusing on all the areas that students are. We are identifying areas of weakness where students have, and we're targeting those areas of weakness and providing instruction in those areas. Interventions for reading and mathematics, again, continuing with that model. All right. High need students have specific programs to address them individual needs, whether that be academic, reading, writing, math, and also a very strong focus on social emotional. Like Barb said, we have the DESA ratings. We also have bounce back and CBITS groups. That we have a DCF initiative that we rolled out as well too, and that's getting bigger and bigger as we do, and we're doing trauma-based therapies with our students. So again, identifying that holistic approach where it's not just academic and rigor, it's also the social and emotional well-being of our students as well too, to get through the everyday life that they have to live.
So we continue to have some obstacles with chronic absenteeism this year. COVID is still here, and on top of that, we have flu A that's going around. So, while we don't condone having kids come to school sick, they stay home. We have very, very biweekly pre-K through 6 attendance reviews. We have all of our attendance documented in PowerSchool, and we have lists that every 2 weeks we go through, and we look at the numbers, and then we develop plans, almost single, for each individual student and family. What's nice is we're doing incentives for perfect attendance, and the really nice thing about that is we're not just from day one, September, to now. It's every month you get a new start. So yes, maybe September was a bad month for you, you were sick, but you have a new chance. So every month we have recognitions that we recognize for that month. Everybody that had perfect attendance, we announce, we give them recognition, little prizes, and for perfect attendance. And then we have a raffle for a nice prize. So kids get excited about that every month. Parent meetings for students that are high risk, becoming chronically absent, so getting those parents in, discussing how we as a team with the parent involved as part of that team can help reduce their child's absences. Every day when we don't hear from parents, we go through the list and the nurse calls those parents and verifies the absences and communicates the protocols and the need for more documentation if necessary. Monthly letters to all families who have missed more than 10% of the school year, and required makeup work for all students with remote absences. We can give credit if they are on remote for COVID, for any work that they complete when they're out, so we can take those absences off, which helps tremendously.
So if we look at physical fitness, there's multiple indicators for this. There's the pacer, there's sit-ups, there's push-ups, there's flexibility. So what we're doing is we're working with our physical education teacher. She's planning every single day when she has physical fitness class to be able to work with the students on those particular skills. So they're doing sit-ups, they're doing push-ups, just as their particular warm-up. So she's working to increase their generalized fitness for this. She's also goal setting with them in the hallway. You'll see when students achieve different levels. She has a poster board out there where they get their names celebrated. So between those two things, which is, fitness doesn't happen overnight. That's a long-term commitment to be able to build that for children. It's important that we continue to work on that throughout the year and not just right before an assessment, because that will not work. So this is something that's ongoing throughout the year to improve the health and wellness of our children. I believe that concludes our presentation. We are happy to entertain any questions that you might have. Renata, I know you were going to ask a question earlier.
It was answered. I was just the testing grades. So it's 3 through 6, and then 7, 8, and 11 at the upper.
And then there's, for the high school indicators, you can see in that indicator list, there's different grades that some of the indicators pull their data from. But they're all listed on that indicator sheet. Doug?
I guess I'd start by saying I'm really happy, but I'm not surprised, because you guys have delivered time after time, year after year. This team that we have in place in this school, whether it's the 3 of you and Rosie and all your staff, you guys are incredible. What you've managed to do is so impressive, and you've had so many obstacles the last couple of years. I'd like to add that I know chronic absenteeism is a concern, and I know you want to work on it, but there's a lot of things you just can't control. And you can't beat yourself up over that. You can address certain portions of it about, the normal absenteeism, but you do have to wonder, without that additional absenteeism, where would we be? Like you said earlier, we'd be even better off than we are now. I'd also like to comment on the fact that you're doing PD in-house, because that speaks to a couple things. One, it means you have the instructional strength and the depth of experience in-house to bring all your newer teachers up to speed, as opposed to sending them out of the school, out of the district. I know when I first got on this board many years ago, there was a huge expense for sending people down to Columbia College for PD, and it was not well received amongst board members or the community to see the kind of dollars that were being spent on that. So I think it speaks volume that you're able to do that and do it so well. And I guess the only final comment I would say is I think a lot of administrations would be happy to say we're doing really well and then just kick back. You guys are not resting on your laurels. You're already looking at what you can do better and how you can improve scores more. And that just speaks to the whole ethic and philosophy that you have embedded in what you do and what within your team. So I'm just really, really impressed and very, very happy. Thank you all so much for everything you do.
Thank you.
Chris?
Yeah, two questions. The Pearson Achievement Breakdown, does that include out of district?
No, that is just Pearson School. Our district score includes out of district.
That's the difference, would you say?
Yes.
All right, and so you're talking about the DIRG, this one?
Which page?
Either one, doesn't matter,
Either one.
17, 18.
Yep.
Why are Pearson and Winchester broken down separately?
Because I broke them down because we're actually broken down into three. We're broken down into bachelor last year, but they only have chronic absenteeism as a score. Then we're broken down by Pearson, and then we're broken down by the district. So the district includes out-of-district placements, it includes Hinsdale, well, bachelor at the time, and it includes Pearson. So that's your holistic score as the district as a whole. But I also thought it was important to be able to pull Pearson out because Pearson is really where the majority of these scores come from because Hinsdale, bachelor, only contribute to that one area. So I wanted to pull them out separately.
And then, so out of district is in our total score, but not in any of Gilbert's score.
Correct. They
Okay.
have their own scores.
But does their score include any out of district?
No,
No.
it will not include any out of district. No.
And then did the other districts also break down there by school?
So one I pulled was, so in the DIRG index is all straight district, and then I just pulled Pearson into that also.
As a
because I have the
comparison?
data.
Got it.
But when you go to the local one, so I pulled some areas that had like elementary schools, just like Pearson, which was Litchfield Intermediate, because that is the exact pre-K to 6 model that we have. Thomaston was the district as whole, Barkhamsted is elementary, Canton was intermediate again, same as Pearson. R7 is all high school, Heartland is pre-K 8, so that's similar. New Hartford is pre-K 6, I believe. Then Winchester to State, Sharon is also elementary through 6, Colebrook is, Torrington was as a district, Norfolk's just elementary, Kent, that was as a district, and TGS was just Gilbert.
Got it.
So it was kind of tried to be specific around who was elementary versus just kind of pulling whole districts that had lots of high school comparisons. I also wanted to give you elementary comparisons too.
So when you say Gilbert, it's 7, 8, and 11?
It's, well, I wouldn't just say 7, 8, and 11, because remember, there's graduations, there's arts
right,
in
right,
there,
right.
there's physical fitness in there.
Okay.
And those are pulled from various others. So I would look at that as a holistic picture from 7 to 12.
7 and 12, okay.
So out-of-district Gilbert is under Winchester District, or no,
Well,
it's not captured at
There's
all?
no high school, so our out-of-district is only counted through pre-K age 6, or grade 6, excuse me. Not the out-of-districts at the high school level, because we don't have a high school, like, that we run.
Right, I'm thinking like 7, 8, like how Gilbert is,
So our out-of-districts will not count towards Gilbert's.
They'll count towards the school that they're placed in.
Yes.
Okay, got it.
right, that's what I meant. So I mean, they're not captured anywhere here. Right, okay.
And in the achievement results, like there's a breakdown of Pearson, and there's all students, high needs students. But high needs defined as special education, EL, and free and reduced, which is 65% plus of the population.
Correct.
So it's a combination.
And that's why that high needs population area is so good for us. I mean, I'm looking right now at, I think it was on the growth results. Our high needs students actually outperformed our all student categories in both ELA and mathematics. If you see that in ELA, our high needs population met their growth targets at a rate of 63.8. And in math, they were at 74.9. Both of those numbers, they have outpaced the generalized population as a whole, which shows we are closing achievement gaps.
And Chris, our high needs population, although maybe not identified students, we have a lot of students that are in tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 SRBI that we're keeping out of possibility of referral by providing those intervention services. So our numbers could be even possibly higher identification rates if we do not have those services in place. So when I'm thinking of service and I'm thinking of high needs, those are students that quite possibly are students that are really struggling as learners. Without those interventions in place, they will continue to struggle as learners. So although you're thinking of the socioeconomic piece because that's included, I think that's a thing we have to take into consideration as a whole as a district. That's our district, but also we have a large component of our students that are in tier 1 through 3 SRBI. That takes up a lot of our level of our kids in our district.
Well, I know we've seen breakdowns before with, like, special ed, or, you know, where it was broken down by just, like, watching their growth. I don't
That's the
remember
work
where
that we
we
do.
saw that before. And so, you know, it can't be compared to this, because this is really 65, maybe up to 75% of our district in one versus the other.
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting how that's all kind of looped into that, you know.
There's identifying factors, so there's no way that they can break out those types of things in this type of scoring, because there'd be too many identifying factors, so they have to include it this way. But that's the work that Barb and our team at Pearson does, that we take those kids, we identify those kids through our IAB work, through all that work that we're doing, and that's why our kids are making those improvements, because we can identify, we can get into the weeds and identify those areas and break it down and look at what the areas that we need to improve upon. And that's why they're making the growth that we see.
I was gonna ask too, is if it's over 65%, right? You said up to 75. I mean, there could be some overlap between the 20% special education and then there
Absolutely.
definitely is.
We absolutely have kids that are EL,
Right.
special education, and free and reduced lunch. So you might have 3
Could all help.
areas that could be stressors for you.
So to see that much growth is like really impressive because it's more difficult to skew the, right? Do you know what the percentage is of the, I'm sorry, of the, I can't remember what the, what was the term for that?
High needs?
High needs, thank you.
I think it was, say it was around 68%, 65%, something
Had it
right
in
around
your slide.
mid-60s.
Was it in there?
I thought so.
Yeah.
Thought I saw it in there.
Well, that's
Well,
pretty
60,
good.
but that's, yeah, so I'm wondering about the combined.
I don't know what the combined is, but it's not gonna be more than 65% because the largest number in that, we have 20% of our population special education. We have about 8% of our population that's EL, and then we have 65% of our kids are eligible for free or reduced lunch. So that's gonna be the largest percentage.
Okay. Thank you.
Melanie, can you go back to the state versus Winchester, the accountability index with the graphs? I was wondering.
Way back at the beginning.
Yeah, the blue, that's it, that's
Yep.
it. The gap, 19, 20, 20, 21,
Yep, they
That's-
did not run.
they didn't because of COVID?
Accountability index because of the pandemic.
Okay,
So those
that's
2
right.
years, we had waivers on the accountability index.
that's right, I remember that
Yep.
now. Okay, waivers. Can you explain the state on page 16, percent points earned 0 for chronic absenteeism? Can you explain
Yeah.
that? What is that?
Let me go back to
That's
that
just
one
kind of-
real quick. Okay, here we go.
Yeah.
So on there, the target the state sets is 5% or less to achieve all 50 points, okay?
Oh, okay.
So when it looks like here for the actual index rating, the 0.9% for the index rating, they earned 18.2%, but it wasn't enough to be able to have any type of points earned on the state end of things. So when the state did that, our data, we ended up with 36.4% of the points.
Yep.
Their percentage for the high needs population must have been much higher than that
So really
to
bad.
not achieve any index
Yeah,
points.
so really bad.
Yes.
Okay. Wow.
And just so you know, all of this data is available publicly. It's all on EdSite Public, and you can go in and you can scroll through all this information. You can filter it down by district. You can filter it down to school. So all 169 districts in the state have this data available. Any other questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well done.
Next item on our agenda is public comment. I see no members of the public here, so we'll move on to the consent agenda. We have two items on the agenda, consent agenda from the regular BOE meeting and our committee meetings. Is there a motion to approve?
I don't see any edits on Kristen's notes, I'm just saying.
All right, well,
I'll make a
Okay.
motion to move.
Move. Second.
All in favor? Great.
unanimous?
Thank you.
Can I ask a quick question? It's about this week's agenda. On the first page, it says to the Board of Education members down at the bottom, very first page.
Yep.
It says, here's your packet, and then it just says, the Board of Education meeting we held at Pearson School.
Yeah. Typo.
It's not the end of the world, but I just,
We'll take care of that.
because I don't even know if that actually goes out, that part.
Good catch.
I will take care of that.
I'm surprised Chris didn't see that.
I bet she did.
Well, the
I just
actual,
cut her off.
the agenda, page 1 says Hicks Room, so we're all right, Town Hall.
Oh, yeah.
Good catch, though.
Trying to steal my-
Renee, I don't know if you have anything to add to the Gilbert report, but I would prefer to defer that discussion to talking about the state legislative report, unless you have anything you'd like to bring up.
Okay.
We do have a Gilbert meeting tomorrow night. No, I did that.
Yeah, he did
Oh,
that.
we did? Oh, I missed
Yeah.
that. I apologize.
Trying to slow me down.
I'm sorry. I won't do that.
Okay, so correspondence.
We have just a couple letters of resignation. One from Karen Asepi. She has retired, and that's it. Just
Can
one.
I ask what department Karen was in?
Paraprofessional. That's it.
One quick question before we move on, sorry. On number 8, the Gilbert report, you mentioned the Gilbert meeting is tomorrow night. Is that online?
No,
You don't, okay.
you might know somebody who's there, though.
I might.
You could also go if you want, and reserve.
Okay.
I don't think I deserve that look.
And that brings us up to the superintendent's report.
All right, so I do want to celebrate our teachers have been working tirelessly. We have parent-teacher conferences Wednesday, Thursday, Friday of this week. Right now, through our Pick a Time app, we have scheduled 545 students out of the 603 to have parent-teacher conferences. That's a 90.38% rate. So that's really, really high. That's
That'd be an
fantastic.
increase, right?
So that's a great number of families coming in. And we're bugging the ones that we haven't heard from yet. So I attended with Rosie, Carrie Charpinski's Teacher of the Year ceremony at the Bushnell, which was beautiful. We have been holding our biweekly attendance meetings and focusing on decreasing our chronic absenteeism. We also held interviews for kindergarten assistant position and hired a candidate. All positions are filled in the district for the first time for instructional support staff, less one as of this past Friday. Sorry about that. I met with Iris White from the State Department of Education to review our quarterly results and planning for next steps. She was really, really pleased with our accountability results, which is great. Excuse me, I apologize. At Hinsdale, they installed a sensory pathway in the hallway, and this helps students to self-regulate their bodies. So it's like a path going down the hallway. It's got numbers, they skip, they jump, they hop, they roll. Whatever the little sticker on the floor says is what they end up doing. The Board of Education, administration, coaching staff participated in instructional walkthroughs at the Pearson School, and the walkthroughs were focused on support staff, small group instruction, and intervention services. I want to thank those board members that were able to come out and join us. I don't know.
That was extremely impressive to see, and I strongly urge that we do an invitation to the Board of Selectmen to see something. They've seen the same thing, so when they're considering our budget, they know what they're talking about.
I will extend an invitation for January. So under operations, the administration and financial teams are working on budget preparation and needs for fiscal year '24.
You missed this attendance recognition.
Yeah.
students in the district receive perfect?
Oh, yes, I apologize. I did miss that bullet. Students in the district did receive perfect attendance. We had 228 students in November that were recognized between Hinsdale and Pearson for perfect attendance.
That's a high percentage.
Yes, so every one of those students gets a really sparkly pencil that says perfect attendance, and then one person in each grade level randomly gets selected for a family 4-pack to Apple Cinema for movie tickets. So, and then we do that every single month, so that way every child has the opportunity 10 times throughout the school year to try to achieve.
Any chance that's donated by Apple Cinemas?
It is not donated. It's actually donated through our CHAMPS programming, though. So our revenue stream out of CHAMPS actually helps to pay for that for students. So going down here to the bottom, Nancy and I and our administrators are working tirelessly on budget numbers at this point. Nancy and I have also been working with a company called Janitorial Manager to roll out new custodial software. This is helping us to be able to keep our buildings clean, neat, and organized. So we'll be rolling that out probably in early January, I'm going to assume. So what is going to happen, there is going to be a QR code at the beginning of every single classroom right on the doorway. The custodian will scan with their iPad that's on their cleaning cart, the QR code. They have to mark exactly what has been cleaned in the classroom, and then they scan it when they go out. So we get a time in, a time out. So if you took an hour and 20 minutes to clean one classroom, we now know that. Versus if you took 5 minutes and maybe didn't clean the classroom, and that what happens. So it's going to help us to be able to put in some efficiencies and some accountability measures around building cleanliness.
Will that interface with the new HVAC?
No, there's no tie-in between the two of them. Hinsdale Renovation Committee has met twice. We've completed 99% of the invoices on the project and expect closeout in early January. Our financial projections, which Doug told you about earlier, have us significantly under the expected bond amount. So I'm not quite ready to celebrate till I see those final numbers, but we're in a really good place. We've held interviews for part-time custodians and have recommended an individual that is local for hire. He's very, very excited. He will start with us this upcoming Monday, I believe. Yes. Doug and I met with the CT Green Bank to review their presentation on solar for Hinsdale and Pearson. At this point, Hinsdale is the optimal project. Pearson's issue is the fact that we need to have a further discussion on the roof and its condition, but we'll hear more about that in our presentation later on that. Under leadership, I continue to participate in the CAPS legislative meetings, bi-weekly health department meetings, which are now not just focusing on COVID, which are focusing on flu and RSV, so that's important information for us to be able to know. I also attended the school law series for Shipman and Goodwin, and the focus was on collective bargaining. Hosted a BOE training in partnership with Shipman and Goodwin, which I hope was well received by the Board of Ed. Attended the last LCSA meeting in November, and then also have been participating. Doug and Holly and Greg and I have been meeting on a monthly basis to just keep each other abreast of what's going on between TGS and WPS. Under our student enrollment, we are at a new high of 606 students at this moment, pre-K to grade 6. I do anticipate that number to go down, though, for this upcoming January, because we had 3 homeschooling students that had come into us from homeschooling who have withdrawn because they've been pretty ill throughout this marking period. So they're going back to homeschooling, so that will drop back down. Our chronic absenteeism for November is high again. We've been hit with the flu, upper respiratory, stomach bug, and COVID all at the same time. It's been, I would say in the past 2 weeks specifically, just incredibly difficult since we've come back from Thanksgiving break.
How's staff?
In the same place as the kids. Thank you, Seamus, for coughing and demonstrating that. It's just everybody, I mean, it's just been incredibly difficult for consistency. There isn't a staff member, I don't think, that's been ill yet.
But it has, so you've been using your sub that you have on site, and then everyone's been able to cover, like there hasn't been any major?
It's really been pulling our interventionists from their tasks. We do have our building sub back off of maternity leave. It's been internal coverage because we don't really have, a robust sub pool that comes in. We have maybe 2 or 3 ladies that consistently will sub for us when they're available. But it's been a lot of internal coverage. I think last week we hit a high of 32 absences in one day for certified and non-certified staff. So it's tough when you're getting that number across the district to cover. Looking at the Gilbert enrollment, they are sitting at 408 students right now.
On the bright side, it's less kids to cover too, though, right?
Tara, there's always a bright side for you. And if we go into our financial projections next, right now our appropriated budget, we are sitting at a year-end expected balance of $89,000, which will ebb and flow over the course of the next few months. Our grant carryover money and what we're expecting at the end of this year is sitting at $346,000 right now. Going into the lunch account, last time we talked about that grant, so it has come down. I believe last month it was right at $28,000. We have used a little bit of that surplus money, and we are at $25,151 in the food services line.
Can I ask a question about the food service? And Nancy, I apologize because I should know the answers, but Ed Advance runs this program, right?
They oversee it for
They
us, yes.
oversee it. So what exactly how do they get paid, and what services do they provide that are included in what we're looking at here?
They ensure that we are in compliance with the boatload of regulations that we are updated on a daily basis from the state. So they keep us out of trouble there. They also help oversee the staffing when there are absences. And they come in and they do training with our staff. They come in and they monitor how they're serving. They're assisting with helping to find more creative ways to involve the kids with the food and with what they're having and make things look more appealing. And there are a variety of ways. If we need a new piece of equipment, they go out and research it for us.
And how do they get paid? Is there a fee?
We have a contract with that, a monthly contract, and if you look on where it says management services,
Yep,
the 53,000,
yep.
that's their annual fee. It went up just a skosh over 1% this past year, so it's a very good deal of these kinds of inflation.
So the payroll you handle, or we handle in-house?
Yes,
We buy the
they are our
supplies.
employees,
Okay, and we buy the supplies
yes, through the program.
through which?
We pay for the supplies with the money that we get from the National School Lunch Program
Mhm.
and lunch receipts.
Okay, I'm asking all these questions because this is going to be a topic at Gilbert, so I want to make sure I'm well informed about telling them what we do here and how it operates, so,
Yeah, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to
Okay.
reach
good.
out.
Thank you for the clarification.
Are supplies the food?
Yes,
Okay.
paper goods
Okay.
and small little utensils.
So
Opposed
those
to big
sporks.
pieces of equipment.
So lunch receipts are for stuff beyond the basic meal, right? The lunch,
sorry.
the lunch
Little
receipts.
voice next to me.
Yeah. Lunch receipts, what is included with that? I mean, students paying for it?
If the teachers want to buy lunch, if a student wants to buy ice cream,
So something
Those would be
extra,
the
because
receipts.
all the kids are getting the basic meal.
they all get
It's
a
the
basic.
extras that add into the
They get a
base.
basic meal, a breakfast, and a lunch.
Mm-hmm.
If they want a second breakfast or lunch, it has to be paid for.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
And I'm so sorry, I missed, where does that show on there? That's the lunch receipts?
Yes, that's that's the
First
top-
item.
top
Gotcha,
line,
yep,
yeah.
yeah, I see, okay. So it's like the ice cream, all that stuff. Thanks. It's a lot of ice cream money. It is a lot of ice cream.
Did I interrupt you, or are you done?
No hires.
Okay. Board action items, we have some new hires that you're going to inform us about, but we don't really need to approve, right?
Correct. Welcoming back Sybil Webb. She left us, and we have drawn her back to us as an interventionist. Emily Miller was hired as the kindergarten assistant, and that was actually a hot commodity job. We had quite a few interviews for that position, which was nice. Alexis Lemire is coming into us at the Gilbert School, and it looks like she is going to be a paraprofessional. And Kara Howe, paraprofessional for Pearson School. She has since passed her parapro, which is good. We are welcome back our retired ELL teacher to cover maternity leave. Ms. Pregano is coming in and serving as a long-term substitute for us. We hired parent Devin Pratt as a paraprofessional. I'm loving the fact that we're getting more and more parents applying to the district, and it does a lot of things for our community when this happens because they have intimate knowledge and can really advocate for our district. And it's been nice to be able to have some parents in the school district.
Your funding sources for all that?
Paraprofessionals are usually appropriated budget. So any of the paras are going to be the appropriated. The EL specialist is also that long-term sub comes out of the appropriated budget. We have, that's another para. And then the interventionist is a combination of appropriated budget and ESSER funding.
Thank you.
Look at that, Nancy, right off the top of my head.
And we have grants from the Northwest Community Foundation
Yes.
to approve.
We have actually, if I could add that one to there for the acceptance of the Northwest Community Foundation for the Inchy Bookworm Grant in the amount of $3,000. We probably could accept number 1 and number 2 and the Inchy Bookworm under one motion. So we received a $700 stipend from Northwest Community Foundation for our school ready parent engagement. Emily was here last time talking to you about that. We also received an ECE well-being stipend in the amount of $700 for early childhood educator professional well-being. And then we have the $3,000 for the Inchy Bookworm vending machine that we received. So I just want to highlight the work that our staff is doing around grants because this is free money coming into the district that's really extended services and programming and experiences. So, this is something that obviously doesn't build upon our tax base. This is supplemental funds that our staff have to do independently to be able to get these items into the district. So we appreciate that effort.
Mel, can you tell us what the $700 for ECE professional well-being, what are the intentions or some examples or ideas for how that would?
Chris, I'm gonna have to get back to you on that. Emily and Rosie are probably the most expert on that, unless Nancy, you have the application with you. I don't.
I have not seen the application.
Okay, so can I get back to you and email you on that tomorrow?
Great, thank you.
All right, thank you.
We need a motion to approve the grants on item B1, B2, and then the $3,000 also coming from Northwest Community Foundation.
Motion to accept. Oh, second.
Second?
Pick one.
Any discussion or questions? If not, all in favor? Okay, that's 3 out of 4.
Unanimous.
And we have one other from the St. Andrew's Church in Kent.
Yes, so Nancy's church is always so generous to us. St. Andrew's Church out of Kent usually on a yearly basis provides us with a $500 donation to be able to help with critical needs, specifically winter boots, hats, mittens, gloves, jackets, snow pants, so that our students can go outside and play and enjoy the beautiful snow that we have right now. So I'd ask the board for you to please approve that funding donation.
I'll make a motion.
The second from Jeanette, all in favor? And that's unanimous, thank you.
Can I just ask when we make the purchase for, because I assume there's a great need for those outdoor, the outdoor wear. Do we kind of ever try and get a deal with that, like, I'm just wondering how far we can make that $500 go? I don't mean to.
So we're pretty thrifty.
Yeah, okay.
So it's a combination. A lot of our social workers go out and actually like shop Walmart and that, and they end up looking for sales. This week, I want to say we did 22 families, was it, for winter hats and gloves on one of the high need donation items that we needed. So there were 22 families this past week, and we just got a new donation today. Someone brought in a whole bag of hats, mittens, and gloves that we have available to hand out too.
I know Mr. Saka's room has like up to the ceiling in like sweatpants, and like snow bands and stuff like that.
Good.
They're-
Okay.
there's tons.
They're in good shape. Oh, okay,
Yeah.
that's good to know, okay, thanks.
If Walmart sold out of snow pants for winter, might be a problem in Winchester Public Schools.
I have a question about our approval of the St. Andrew's Church. Do we need a letter for that in the packet
A letter for what?
from St. Andrew's to show that the money's coming?
Money has arrived. I've already sent a thank you note,
Okay.
or mailed it in.
And there, isn't there
But do you
typically
mean
a
for the
letter?
record?
Is there typically a letter or some sort of such?
It was just a check.
Okay. Oh,
So I explained what we're up to, and
yeah,
they were very happy to
okay.
help us
Are
out.
you looking at the gift horse?
No, I'm just curious about record.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, thank you very much for that, Nancy. So, what was it, last week? Melanie and I met along with Greg, Josh, I think, was Todd part of that meeting? I don't remember.
I don't believe so.
Okay, we met with representatives from Connecticut Green Bank, which is a quasi-public agency, which is tasked with facilitating solar installations for municipalities, probably other people as well, but municipalities we know about. And what they do is they will come to your school or your site, and they will do a site analysis and make a judgment about what the potential solar gain is based on the space that you might make available. In our case, it was the roofs of Hinsdale, Pearson, and Gilbert also they had a site plan of their roofs. So they took that into consideration as well. And then they would take it from there to potentially look at estimated cost for doing the solar installation and give the district an estimate on what the savings could be should that installation be completed. As I understand it, the Connecticut Green Bank would be the owner. They would be using our space, but they would oversee the contractors. They would put out to bid for contracts, and they would oversee it once they had a successful bidder, and oversee the installation, and then they would in fact be the energy supplier for a portion of our demand. And based on all that, and their profit needs, which we're not quite sure what they are, I don't know if they need to break even or if they need to make money. They really weren't transparent about that. They give you an estimate on how much money you might save over the course of 20 years. Included in that estimate is an assumption that your energy costs will increase 2% per year. And I specifically asked, and I got an answer again today, they did not include in their estimate the fact that the supply side of Eversource's bills are going up 100% in January. That was not included. They said, well, we figured over 20 years it'll average out. So based on that, as Melanie mentioned in her earlier comment, Hinsdale looks like it could be a slam dunk for us because it's got brand new roofs and they could put a sizable installation in. There's some trees on an abutter's property which would probably have to come down, but they said that they would actually take the lead on that, approach the property owner about having the trees removed and then offer to replace them with a hedge or something comparable. So it's still kind of a work in process. I think if Melanie, if I'm not getting ahead of myself, Hinsdale would be something we'd want to look at. Pearson, not so much because of the roof conditions.
I agree. The issue is that kind of time is of the essence. If you look on page 57 of your packet, well, actually, let me back you to page 55, because I want to walk you through the Hinsdale project itself. So on 55 in your packet at the bottom, you see the Hinsdale School?
Is this a lease or a PPA that you're talking about?
This is a PPA.
You see the Hinsdale, the solar panel mark out is their suggested layout of solar panels for Hinsdale. The kilowatt size for that building would be 176. The annual production looks like it's gonna be about 208,000. And then you look at the effective rate, so it would be 0.0810 cents for the amount that we would be buying supply for. It would offset our supply purchase by 80% based upon the size of the system and the schematics that they put forward around how much solar energy it would actually produce. So an 80% offset compared to what we saw on the offset of Gilbert or on Pearson was significant.
That requires the property owner to agree to tree removal.
Correct. Those trees are in pretty rough shape, so I'm going to be very surprised if the property owner does not greatly agree.
Is that the same property owner that wants us to take down that building?
No.
I don't believe
It's
so.
on the if you look at the picture, Cheryl, you see how it kind of curves around, up
Yeah.
and then to the right? It's the trees right up against the,
I don't know the property lines over there, so I know there's that one property owner that we have.
yeah, it's a different.
issue.
abutter,
Okay,
I think.
because I could see that coming.
No, that's on the other side of
Quid
Hinsdale.
pro quo.
So that's the concept that they're proposing. That's the amount of savings that they're estimating that we would be seeing on the supply side.
How long will the rate stay the rate? Is it locked in for a
It's,
number?
I believe it is, from what I understood, Doug, it's locked, correct?
For how long?
20 years. It's a
Locked in
PPA,
rate?
PPA is a power purchase agreement. Sounds like Cheryl knows what they are, but I believe it's a 20-year fixed rate.
That's the generation rate? What's the one that went up?
That's not the
The-
generation's delivery rate. is
Delivery
what it is.
rate went up, right?
Right.
No, it's the
Supply.
generation rate went up.
No, Eversource is increasing their delivery rate, because you can buy your electricity from a different provider, but they're still gonna charge the
No,
delivery rate.
it's
up.
going up on the generation rate because they have no control over that. The generators are the ones who are using the natural gas to produce power, and they're complaining, they're saying that they have no, that's why the escalation is. It's not the delivery side.
I
it's
thought it was
just-
the delivery side was going
No,
up.
it's the generation.
So the .08 is the delivery?
No, that's the
It's-
generation. There is no delivery because it's sitting on the roof.
All right. So
We're
this
not
is
paying
this-
Eversource anything,
what's
or
this
pretty
cost
much
called?
low,
We're
the
still
20%?
We're still on the grid. So if you took a typical month and you said you spent 10,000 on power, you're not gonna spend 10,000, you're gonna have 80% of that coming from the panels on the roof.
Which we're not paying for.
We're not paying
Correct.
for the panels, no.
We don't
that's
have to pay for that electricity either, or we are paying for that electricity
Well,
still?
We're paying this rate for the electricity.
Which
that's
is,
how they
what's the
recoup
difference
that-
between that and what we're paying?
Right now, I want to say we're paying like 14 cents or something like that kilowatt off the top of my head.
Instead of 0.8 cents?
Correct.
Okay, so about half.
So they're gonna recoup their investment because Connecticut Green Bank is gonna bankroll this whole thing. And their financial calculation says, we're going to give you 80% of your power from these panels at 0.08 cents per kilowatt hour. We're gonna come out in the black at the end of 20 years, and you're gonna save money because you're paying a reduced rate for your
And
power.
so we're gonna be paying somewhat around 60% of what we're paying now. If you look at the
Yeah,
0.8%
and again-
versus the 8 cents
Yeah.
versus this 14 cents.
For us is
80 to
significant.
20. Yeah, no, I know it's significant.
And these
Be
numbers are not
significant in
hard.
my household too, but, you know.
These are not hard numbers yet, they're
Uh-huh.
estimates.
And we're not gonna be charged for the tree removal.
No, they'll take care of
Absolutely
that.
not.
How about maintenance of the panels
That's on
themselves?
Their responsibility.
They own it, they're just,
So does it
renting
void
our
the
roof.
warranty of the roof?
but it's not a rental.
Say that again?
Does it void the
They're using the roof.
warranties on the
Use
roof?
it.
They're
We
using
have to
it-
look into the warranty on the roof, but there's been so many other districts that have put brand-new roofs on and put solar installations, on them. I'm sure there's gonna be some type of
Are
workaround
these,
with
were
that.
these flat hot mops? What are they up there? I don't remember.
They're not hot mop, I don't know.
The roofs?
It's rubber.
No, they're rubber membrane.
Rubber membrane.
EPDM.
So these are flat roofs. I always remember Pearson having to shovel off the roofs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
What happens when it snows with these? I don't know much about solar panels
I
on
asked
flat
that
roofs.
question.
It sits
and
right
they-
on the top and you collect 0 sun.
Yeah, and they said that over time it will melt, but in an extraordinary circumstance, they implied they might come out and do something. But I know my solar panels that I have at home are on a 45-degree angle
Yeah.
facing south. A couple sunny days, it kind of melts and slides off. But they
Yeah,
said-
but on a flat roof, what happens?
Well, the panels are not flat. The panels
they're
are.
pan-
They're
oh.
set up,
Oh, okay, I didn't know that. Okay, thanks.
How about drilling holes into the roof to secure these things?
Well, that's what Melanie was pointing to, and Greg at Gilbert had concerns about it because apparently somebody put a bug in his ear about it. But what Melanie is saying is that this is not new, that a lot of people are doing this, and that the incidents, to her, in her opinion, I share that this is not something that can't be overcome. I mean, obviously, anytime you poke a hole in a roof, you're worried, but there are ways you can seal it.
And it's not viable in Pearson because of the roof condition.
correct. We need to discuss what the next step would be on the roof.
But have we looked at the rental option where they do usually do the roof, take care of the roof replacement process?
This is not part of that for
No, I know,
municipalities.
I'm just asking, have we, did you?
We're not there yet.
Okay.
We're not there yet. I have a couple other ideas that I'm working at right now for Pearson roof,
Okay.
which would be out about hopefully 3-4 years from now.
And this is something Gilbert's going to be discussing tomorrow's meeting too?
How about working with the town hall, police department, that's here? Are there other public buildings that we could talk to, work with, as a way to get a better deal than .08?
Well, they did say that if you do a lot of projects within the same municipality, that there's an aggregate savings, which mainly comes from the fact that you would contract out to one provider who would do all the panel installations and give you a better cost. I don't think that's gonna change the overall bottom line too much, but it would give you a break on the actual cost to install for them, and they would pass that on. To your point about the town, Josh has been part of the conversation. I haven't heard anything from him about town.
Nothing on
buildings.
town buildings. The initial proposal for on the town side of things was gonna be down near Public Works Garage. However, the condition of that particular building itself needs addressed, so that was not a viable option at this point.
And just so you all know, you might be already aware of this, but the solar installation that has about 10 acres of solar panels off of Platte Hill Road, part of the deal there was that the town would receive a credit on their power bill, and I think, Nancy, it's about $2,000 a month?
It's waning a little bit now because we're moving into, lower solar time. But it'll pick back up again, once there's more sun
Right.
for the dead of winter.
So the town is already benefiting from that installation.
What's that red little grid thing on the picture on page 55?
Oh, that is a rooftop unit, and there is something there that, like, there's a perimeter on that that can't be infiltrated.
Okay.
Off limits.
You said after 20 years, what was it? That the
Rate can
cost-
go up. You're locked in for 20
Right,
years.
no,
on the
yep,
rate.
that I remember, but I thought there was something else after 20 years, that there was
Well, I
that
think,
you would see something with the cost.
I
But
think
not
there's a
the.
couple of things that come into play. One is the efficiency of the panels declines a little bit over
Well, oh,
time.
okay.
So at the end of 20 years, they might opt to start over, do a new installation with more efficient panels and then sign a new agreement.
What happens if we don't want to continue with them after 20 years? Do they take it off the roof?
Yeah.
So we're not
We're not bound?
obligated to.
It's
They
their
pay for
equipment.
that?
It's their equipment. It's a good question to ask. I'm going to say yes, but I never asked that question.
How long have they been around, do we know?
Can I
Long
review
time.
that?
Yeah.
I think presentation at the front. 2011.
Okay, all right, just curious, just as one of these
Yeah,
places
I know,
that like
because,
puts them up.
what if
and
they folded them
they're-
before
yeah.
20 years is up, and we're stuck
Yeah,
with these
we're
panels?
stuck with these panels.
And it is quasi-public, and I'm really not sure what that means. So
You on the Gilbert board, quasi
yeah, I know. It's a bad word to mention, right?
Oops.
JCC in Woodbridge, their
So-
garage is one of their projects. And that was
So the next
probably-
thing for the board would really be to have a discussion no later than our January board meeting about signing the letter of intent. If we are expected, and I'll get you the answer around the warranty information for our next board meeting, but we do need by mid-January at the latest, a letter of intent if the board does elect to move forward with the Hinsdale component of this project.
Do we need to know whether the property owner is on board first?
We can work, yeah, we'll work around that. And they said, honestly, if the trees remained, it's just gonna affect the efficiency of the unit. It's not gonna halt the project.
Right, but won't it affect
Of
the
course.
amount of the benefit we get from
Yeah.
it?
Correct.
I'd like to know what happens after 20 years if we decide
Yeah,
we're
we can
done.
ask that.
You know, we can ask that question.
And
Hope that the
then the fire department, do they care?
They have to pull permits for all of this, so it goes through
Okay.
regular permitting.
Because sometimes fire departments don't like it because they want to go through the roof to save people. This is different, I think, because it's a flat school roof. But I just thought I'd throw a question out there.
Interesting.
And what was the projected cost savings?
Well,
Or we do not.
Sounds like about 60%, 40% of our
40%.
electric bill over a 20-year period. So that's just doing rough math in my
Yeah,
head.
but did we actually do the math on what 40% of the, I don't
It's
know.
hard to tell on Hinsdale because we don't have a full year's
right.
usage on Hinsdale right now. We've only been operating that building for 3 months now, so we literally only have 3 electric bills on it.
But if you look at the difference between a 14 cents a kilowatt,
Oh, yep,
8
versus
cents,
8 cents.
right now, not knowing whether it's gonna go up or down, assuming it's not going down, as far as what we would be charged normally, that's a savings in and of itself.
And one other question, because we can't put them on Pearson, does this impact Pearson's bill? Are we looking at the district as a whole, or is this?
The district gets billed by building. From Eversource, it's broken down by site. So Pearson's bill will remain unchanged. Hinsdale's bill will remain adjusted based upon the results of the solar.
Okay, so it would just be the one building at the
Correct.
approximate 40% reduction.
And I guess I would just add a ethical/moral/economic plug that anything we can do to reduce our dependency on fossil fuels is probably a good thing for the planet and ultimately for our finances because, we're living through it now. It's not pleasant, so. So we will answer your questions next month and hopefully have a vote on it.
And then
Yep.
that's all I'm kind of thinking.
Letter of intent, page 57. Your schedule is on page 57.
So that brings us next to the Gilbert study. Again, this was a meeting with Melanie and I and Holly and Greg and Josh, and I believe Todd was part of that. And the people from the State Department were Kathy Dempsey and
Nathan, one of their legal consultants.
who was an attorney. So I
I'd
know
just
when we.
like to make a point that I was supposed to be part of that meeting, and I was extremely irritated
Okay.
that I wasn't
Well,
included.
I understand, and I apologize for that, but I will tell you that you probably wanted to be a part of that meeting to participate in a process which did not exist.
I wanted to be part of the meeting because it was determined by this board that I would be part of the meetings
Okay.
if we participated, and this was the second meeting that I was excluded from, and I found that improper, and I just, whether I could have participated substantively or not, the fact is that the decision had been made that I would be part of these meetings, and I was excluded from these meetings or forgotten about. And I don't think that's a process we want to continue going forward. I think it sends a bad message to people who sit on this board, who volunteer their time and want to participate in these things.
It was an oversight, and I apologize.
And
for
I
that.
understand it. It was an oversight that occurred twice
Okay,
in the same issue. So I just wanted to bring that up in the public meeting.
okay,
Right? Thank you.
point made. So, just to go back to where you were starting from, Cheryl, I think we all expected that when this study was commissioned by the legislature, that the Department of Education would reach out to us, Winchester and Gilbert, and get some opinions, some data about what went into the budget process and what sort of things, what sort of changes were being looked at or hoped for. They did not do any of that. They basically took it upon themselves to look at the state in general, the other endowed academies, and see if they could find any circumstances that they thought they could apply to the relationship that exists between Gilbert and WPS. They found one relationship between Salem and Old Lyme, which they thought was very similar. They pointed to a contract that had been drawn, I guess, between the two of them, and said, basically, this is the model we think you should look at. I think it was a little underwhelming, quite honestly. I don't think it required a lot of time on their part. I think it was just checking the box. I was a little offended that they wouldn't reach out to somebody, whether it was the Board of Selectmen who initiated the legislation, or the Board of Eds, or Gilbert. I just can't speak to what their thought process was. But I would say, in my opinion, the study amounted to nothing. It really didn't. There's no recommendation other than just look at this model. There's no legislation pending that I think we could count on. They said that any legislation that might be in any way anticipated or proposed would have to include the other endowed academies, and that it would be very unlikely that they would be willing to support that legislation and would probably lobby against it. So therefore, it would not be likely to pass.
Well, the legislation could include, I mean, what we had originally talked about, a couple of years ago now, didn't exclude those other down academies, but it, by its language, but by its terms, it did, because we were focusing on formulating language that would only apply if there was one send-in district, town send-in district, that was providing a certain percentage of the funding for a particular, quasi-public school. So by that language, it excluded, but it didn't specify that it only applied to the Gilberts. There's ways of drafting that. And, I think, where we need to go, as a community, is towards the legislation, because there isn't anything pending. We tried to do that. Our representative, Mr. Case, changed that to the study instead of the legislation that we had asked him to pursue to try to protect this town. And I think we should probably, I would suggest inviting Mr. Case to a meeting to discuss how we can move forward in order to try and to effectuate what we were trying to do 2 years ago. And if he participates, I think that would be fabulous.
Okay, I think you should be a part of that.
I do so.
I think it's extremely disappointing to hear all of that after all the time and energy that we've all spent in the several years to see how these budgets don't work for us as a community, and it just pushes the issue down the road further. And I think we need to now continue to lobby, or at least that's what I will do, to get some legislation. And I don't understand why they believe that we have to affect any of the other academies. There can be carve-outs for Gilbert alone, this relationship of our own town. It doesn't have to affect the other two academies. That piece, I don't understand why they're focused on that. But here we are.
I have a question. This was with Matt Van Horst, right?
Yes, you know him?
Was that?
You know Matt?
I do.
Okay.
So I'm just wondering, and just kind of going by the information that was provided, though, that when we looked at other, is it typical, and please, because I don't know, when doing these studies, it's my understanding that we're looking at other districts, and I know there wasn't an attempt to kind of look at Winchester and Gilbert. But if we're looking for a comparative study, should they have done a study of Winchester, or should they have looked at the other kind of unique situations within Connecticut? Because there's not a lot of other districts kind of facing this same
There's
problem,
no other
right?
district
There's
facing
no
the
other
situation
district.
No,
that
I
we
know.
have.
That's
That's
what
the
I'm saying.
whole point.
Right, and so that's why we're sort of in a pickle with this. But you had mentioned that, like, they didn't make an attempt to do that with Winchester. Were they supposed to, or?
I don't think it was explicit when it was just worded as a study. you know, and I think we all made.
There's no guidance.
We made
Right.
inferences on our own. Oh, a study, that means they're gonna come and talk to us. And they never did.
But we also made
But
our
we made the
verbal
request.
expressions, absolutely. We did also as a board that we expected to be talked to, spoken with.
Okay.
Board of Selectmen as well. I mean, it's a multiple facet, you know, lots of different interest groups are involved.
I think it's accurate, I think Doug's statement that they checked the box is
Yeah.
accurate. You want us to do a study? Okay, here's our study. No guidelines provided. It was really a disingenuous piece of legislation, or if you want to even call it legislation, it was instruction. You know, usually you would see there's to be some guidelines, this is what we want to look at, this is how you need to do. You don't just say, okay, just do a study on this issue, you know, and where there's not going to be any real recommendations, there's not going to be any, there was no guidance, there was no input. You know, they went and looked at, you know, the way two public schools interact. That's not the situation we're dealing with. We're dealing with a situation where there's a particular legislative act that provides a private entity with the ability to dictate this town's budget.
Right. That's the problem.
That's what it is.
No, I
You know,
understand.
and that's a unique situation. And, you know, I know there's other, you know, quasi-academies or whatever they're called now, you know, but they're not, none of them are being all billed, 90-something% of their budget being paid by a town that doesn't have the right to vote on their members, doesn't have any real say in the budgetary process, or in the education that's being provided and provided by them and paid for by the town. So that's where the situation created. I mean, we tried in good faith to negotiate budgets with them for a number of years. One of the things we wanted to have an opportunity, if we couldn't agree on figures, to have arbitration. They did not want to have that in it, or if they wanted to do this last best offer arbitration form, which is just, you know, an eeny, meeny, miny, mo arbitration. It's not a true arbitration. Believe me, I've been involved in the last 2 days in a real arbitration. It's a lot more involved, and the arbitrator then gathers all the facts and makes a decision. That's an appropriate arbitration. So you know, that's what we were trying to achieve, because we felt that that would give us some negotiating power. We have none. We still have
Because of the
none.
law.
All right, so let's go from there. Several months ago, before this study was announced, we were actually looking at potential contracts between Winchester School and Gilbert, and we put it on the back burner because the study was coming out, and that
They
might
put
have
on
been-
that, they wouldn't
They did.
discuss
They
it.
No, we
put it on.
both did. We both.
Well, I don't know, I remember talking about, trying to talk about a contract, and they had
They wrote to
decided
us and
to,
said no.
as soon as the study was, as soon as that proposed legislation was passed by the Board of Selectmen, they said they were no longer gonna enter into negotiations. That was when Holly took reins over there, and that was the end of it. They weren't willing to discuss. That's what I remember being reported, unless something changed and I don't recall it.
I can't speak to that, but I just have a memory that we as a board had reached that same conclusion, that you don't think so?
No, because we specifically
No,
had
it's
a
a directive from
conversation
Gilbert. Yep.
we had specifically had a conversation last year. I remember debating the fact about what the benefits to us would be. And my concern had primarily had to do around the special education aspect. We're at their mercy. We don't, you know, even have assigned EMO
Wait,
We did,
we did get that into this place, but they don't have to. And we're left so vulnerable
All right.
in that regard. But they weren't interested. But at the same time, you know, when we tried to do a very limited contract to make sure we were protecting a few certain things, they rejected that.
Well, I don't remember it the same way you do, but let's move on from there. Because what I would like to do is move forward with the contract negotiations. I'd like Melanie and Greg to pick up where they left off. I think that your points about arbitration are certainly well-founded and should be a part of that negotiation. But I would like to see, as they did before, basically a contract that they think works for both districts, that they accommodate the needs of both districts and bring it before this board and the TGS board for approval. And I think that if you want to have some input into the arbitration piece of it, I think that's fine. But I really don't want board members sitting down with TGS board members going point by point through this whole thing. I think Melanie and Greg did most of the work already, and I'd like to pick up where we left off there.
And what they came up with a few years ago, before everything fell apart, was not acceptable to this board.
Right.
Well,
The
Because
board has
because
proposed
again,
at this
what-
price at the time.
It's the budget process. That's really the
The
only issue.
Accountability,
is the
accountability and budget
process.
process were, you know, as well as
Yeah.
the arbitration piece, those were all the big sticking points, and that was the biggest problem. We respect the efforts of the two superintendents to try to work, but honest to God, I did not feel that that zero-based budgeting process that was put into that contract, which didn't end up being contract, but was still supposedly followed, I know it was followed by us, but when you follow it and it resulted in an 8% increase, I don't see how that zero-based budgeting was followed. And especially when we later find out that things were proposed, were excluded and then added back in. That's not zero-based budgeting. And then things are added in and then not even spent, but they still keep the funds. That's not zero-based budgeting. So while I think the intentions on our end were good, I cannot comment the same necessarily on how it was handled with Gilbert. I am not, I do not feel that Gilbert is operating in good faith. I know I've got a bad reputation as being a Gilbert basher. I don't bash Gilbert. I look at what their process is. I look at what's happened. I look at how they continue to act. And I think we need to have a solid position with it and how we're going to deal with that. And I don't know. I just.
So what's your alternative?
That's
don't
what's
have
so
a budget now.
frustrating. That's what's so frustrating. I would like the drama to end. I would like there not to be this constant battle.
Annual.
But the lack of accountability and how it impacts the remainder of the WPS school system and the town is outrageous. We're right now facing where we're looking for an increase in our budget because we need to have an increase in our budget during a very harsh economic time for our town. And, we tightened down as tight as we could at the last year and took money that we probably shouldn't have taken in order to keep a zero-based budget while Gilbert increased their budget. And I don't see that they're gonna do the same thing for us this year. And that's a concern because whatever they ask for, they're gonna get, because that's the statute.
So you don't think that you could find any relief in language in a contract that included arbitration?
If it includes the arbitration language that I've proposed in the past, where it's a real arbitration, a single arbitrator, because we're gonna pay for the arbitrator anyway, and all the other arbitrators, it comes out of us, at least 90% of it does, 100% on our side and 90% on their side, we pay for through the budgetary process, then no, I don't see that we're gonna have any advantage at this point in that type. It's not even an advantage, it's fairness, it's equity. We don't have that because
So-
they have that statute.
But if there were arbitration language that satisfied your requirement, you would be inclined to move forward with a contract?
Absolutely.
Is that the only benefit to the contract? Like, what are the other benefits
Well,
to
the
having a
main one
contract with Gilbert?
is going to be that if Gilbert School can qualify for reimbursement from the state for capital projects, they could get the same reimbursement we do. The roofing would be 70%. So that money comes down out of their budget and translates to our budget, so our budget request
But
goes down.
Doug, that's not
That's the problem.
accurate. That's the problem, that's not accurate. The 10-year window
Yeah.
applies prospectively, okay? From the date of the last payment, when the project's completed, that's when the 10-year window starts.
Starts, right.
Not before the project is started. They will look at that. If we're doing a contract, we need clawback language, and how is that gonna happen? If the state does a clawback, because let's say Gilbert closes, let's say Gilbert decides they wanna cancel the contract, how are we protected that the state's not coming after us? When we had that meeting with the state about these issues, they were like,
Don't touch it.
we don't know really.
Yeah.
If they're not going, because the 10-year is a perspective. It's not, okay, we have a 10-year contract now, they enter into this major renovation, it's completed in 5 years. That's when the 10-year starts. So our 10-year contract doesn't apply. It was perspective. That was very significant. Mel, you remember that conversation?
I do remember that conversation.
I think at this point, there's been so much change at DAS that I don't know that there's anyone there at this point that has any sort of historical knowledge or understanding of how this truly would be impacted at this point. I'm inclined around construction specifically and reimbursements. Quite frankly, I think that potentially there might need to be legislation written around the specificity of that. Or at least policy at DAS, because I don't think there's anything right now that currently speaks to the what-if scenario. I've never seen anything in writing around the what-if scenario. So I think there could be an outlying question, but I also think at this point, you know, we have to make some type of move, because the money is going to get spent to replace these roofs. We're looking at, you know, $1 million+ and that's either going to come off of the backs of taxpayers and us, or we have the opportunity to be able to work hard to be able to get some language that at least allows reimbursement
But
for the
there's
town.
no requirement in the statute for there to be a contract. There is a requirement for an ongoing relationship. So as long as Gilbert is our sole designated high school, under the statute, the designated high school, for 10 years after they complete that project, they get that reimbursement rate. But if for some reason we're not, and that could be on either side, then there's the potential for clawback. Now, does that clawback apply to Gilbert, or does that clawback apply to WPS? We don't know, but at the same time, in the interim, we're paying for that roof, because the state doesn't start reimbursement until the project is completed and paid for by the locality.
So the state, whenever you do reimbursement through DAS, we do this on Hinsdale, it's a progress. So when certain portions of the project, you actually, as the entity I control in this district, when we put in for reimbursement. So whenever I get a sum of invoices for a particular like Hinsdale, I get enough money, I decide, okay, we've spent $1.5 million, you know, I'm gonna seek reimbursement at this point. So it's the superintendent that controls the request for reimbursement.
But isn't that because Hinsdale was a multifaceted project, whereas if you're doing a roof, $1 million roof, that's one project. There's only one facet to that project. So you're going to that project in of itself has to be completed before you seek the reimbursement.
Yeah, so your roof project, you know, is gonna be, let's say, 6 months long. That's a typical time period,
And
so.
in the meantime, the town has to fund that, or is Gilbert gonna pay for it and then seek the reimbursement? And what they don't get reimbursed, then come for the town.
I understood it to be phases of a.
Well, that's their
I
proposal.
think that's
so
what
they don't
Gilbert,
pass
I'm
the
just
town
talking
vote.
holistically in terms of a whole
Yeah.
number.
Sorry, oh, okay.
And a rough number.
Yeah, and I think, you know, that's a great observation. I think we need more details. We need to know what their project's gonna be. We need to have another conversation with DSS. We need to understand, okay, if this is A, then what's going to happen? How is this going to work out? But again, the statute does not require a contract. The statute only requires an ongoing relationship in order for them to avoid the clawback. As long as we have designated them as our school, which we haven't designated anyone else. Without a contract, we designate them. As long as they're designated, they continue to be designated for 10 years after this project, there will be no clawback. They'll qualify for our rate. So the contract doesn't apply. It's the designation which is the issue.
So they can bail out of a contract even before the 10 years, and then we're left with the bag.
You don't know that.
Well, but the statute doesn't require a contract, so therefore Gilbert can choose to close the contract on us
And it's, yeah, and
at their whim.
And I don't see them
And then
doing
we'd
that.
be
I'm
stuck
just saying
with-
that that's not what I'm trying
They're
to,
assuming ill will there. I don't know why they would
I'm not
do that.
saying
Well, I
they,
mean,
it doesn't have to be ill will. It could be they can no longer financially afford to
financial, it could
run
be
that
anything.
school.
It could be.
It doesn't have to be ill
But
will.
they have, as long as we're paying them $8 million a year, they have a financial.
Maybe not.
But
I
it just
mean,
illustrates how the relationship is not equal. it just constantly goes back to
My
the
sole point is that
inequality.
the argument that we need a contract so they can get this, this benefit is non-existent. That's not what the statute says.
But it's also not the
That's not
issue.
what
This year,
DSS said.
this time it'll be the roof, next time it's a boiler, next time after that it'll be something else.
be
So the
something.
point is that it's just inequitable, it's illegal to me and unjust. And it's nothing personal about the persons trying to work there at Gilbert, it has everything to do with the law.
And all that said, I don't think I'm saying, I know I'm not saying that we shouldn't have contract discussions. I've been saying this for a year. I'm just saying that I don't want them to be premised on something that's not accurate or required by the law.
It's just not fair to the taxpayer.
Well, what's fair to the taxpayers, we do everything we can to minimize the tax burden for educating our kids.
Including continue to advocate for the change of the legislation.
As
That's,
well
I
as
think,
to
our
advocate for an
obligation as
equitable
well.
contract, which gives us some ability of oversight and some real negotiation strength, because right now we don't have that.
Right. You know, for me, I would say that it's a non-starter if there's no language in the discussion for arbitration, mediation, some discussion about a clawback.
All right, then here's what I suggest we do. Before Melanie and Greg spend a lot of their time reviewing this contract, because it appears to be a pretty big sticking point with at least two members of the board, that they look at, and no offense, Cheryl, because I know you're an attorney,
No.
look at our board attorneys to weigh in on the legislation, how they interpret it, and how that may or may not impact the eligibility of Gilbert for state funds. And we also asked them to talk about arbitration language that could work and meet your qualifications.
We already have a letter of study done by Shipman Goodman, and there were no good options. That sits out there already.
Around the
And,
legislation?
yeah, I mean, we've been through this lap so many times before. We've got materials in Melanie's office, of which includes like a multiple-page synopsis of the situation from Shipman and Goodman, who's already studied.
Can I suggest something that might help expedite this situation? We have a special ed MOU. Why don't we take and we do a specific one around DAS construction and do an MOU specifically aside from the actual contract that covers construction specifically, so that way it doesn't halt the process of developing a contract, and it gives us the appropriate time and research to be able to handle the topic of construction reimbursement separate from instruction.
Can
And
it include
finance.
that the Gilbert Trust is going to contribute towards construction
I
repairs
can't-
of their own building?
I mean, it is private building.
Just about as good as I can say, you know, I'm gonna be
Pounds of
Santa Claus and
dollars.
fit down that chimney.
So
Like
the,
it's
for
complicated.
what it's worth, the school corp is approaching and has approached the Gilbert Trust about a capital campaign for a couple of projects, not roofs, but they are looking to raise substantial funds for improving the Gilbert facilities.
Like the tennis court? Just
Uh,
joking.
Science, I think it's a science and opposite. So, I'm hearing a lot of nays, and I get that, you know, God, I've been listening to it for 10 years, so I guess I should by
I
now.
only heard two.
Six.
I only heard two.
Okay, well, 2 nays, okay. But I think, I would like to have the opportunity to develop a document that characterizes the relationship in such a way that Nora can sleep at night, because she's always harping on this, and I know it bothers you, but there's gotta be some remedy outside of legislation, because if you're waiting for legislation, you're gonna wait for a long
No,
time.
and
It's not gonna happen.
And you know what, I'm gonna lobby, because something needs to happen,
I know,
because
but
that's,
what are your
if we
chances
just
now?
constantly
What are your
sit here
chances?
and say, we're gonna try to get a contract, we're gonna work together, we've been doing that for 10 years,
I
we've been
think my
trying.
I think the chances of getting a contract that addresses some of your concerns and Cheryl's concerns are a whole lot higher than you going down to
Well-
Hartford and getting somebody to write draft legislation that meets your needs.
Well, we tried arbitration negotiation, it didn't work.
You're friends with Jay.
Arbitration
Get him to-
discussion,
get
it
him to
didn't
support
work.
us.
But
We
it
walked
doesn't,
away.
it doesn't meet the needs of the other high schools that are impacted by it, and so like, I just don't, I agree, I just don't think we're gonna, like, that that piece is gonna.
I think the writing on the wall came from what the results of the study were.
Yeah.
It checked the box because it's such a small entity amongst the ocean of other issues that it doesn't reach the level of priority that it certainly does for this board. But
In this community.
look at the greater
taxpayer.
scheme of our state. It's not,
Right, but if we
reaching
had,
that
but we
level.
had our representatives advocating for it, it would be much, have a much better chance.
I just don't think it would. It just, the number of schools that it impacts is, and what are the relationships with those schools? I mean, I think that they're,
But,
they don't need the legislation.
No, we do.
no, we need the legislation, and so
do,
do our
but-
kids, and so does this taxpayer. So would you just wait until we get sued?
No, I'm just
You know what I'm
saying
saying?
the other schools
Because
that will be
we've already
impacted by
cut our
legislation.
budget pre-K through 6 to meet the needs of 7 through 12. So all you need is two families then to fight each other over the fact that their students are not being met, their needs are not being met, because it's pillaging from one system to fund another system. And in the end, the taxpayer has only so much money to go around. We know we've been through this for 10 years. This is really the only issue that has created tension between these two boards, is the money and the law. That's it. If that were to be remedied, we'd have no problems here as a school system, pre-K through 12.
So,
So it doesn't seem like it's gonna be remedied anytime soon. Like, what options do we have then? Do we have any options? What alternatives do we have? Can we do our own study? And what would that look like?
Well, perhaps we could. We also need to educate the public on how complicated this issue is. I'm not convinced the taxpayer understands all of this. Only certain people do. Board of Selectmen members do. Board of Ed members are starting to. Some of you are new to this process. You're getting your heads wrapped around
But we would
it.
need to have clear information.
Well, that's
and-
it. It's taken me years to figure this problem out, but it's been a problem even before this board ever existed. It's been before Melanie's ever been here. So, it's just ongoing, problematic, and it's getting worse because we're paying more and more of their budget without equitable or fair representation, and it's just really about the taxpayers' money. And
Well,
it's gonna be uglier as revenues drop, as the taxpayer is gonna be asked to pay more.
Yeah.
And we're just gonna constantly be bickering again in the future, and every year it happens, and kids get caught in the middle.
Nora, I have heard you say, and I have heard Cheryl say on separate occasions, that you did not necessarily object to the amount of money that Gilbert spent on their students, but you objected to the transparency in the budget process. Is that correct?
Not transparency, I object to the inequity in the
Well,
process.
that's
The
that's
legality of
something,
it.
but you can take that and run home with it and scream at the top of your lungs about it, but at the end of the day, we have 400 or something kids at Gilbert School who need to be educated, and it's our obligation to make sure that they get a good education. So if you think that Gilbert is wasting our money, then we have to prove it. If you think that their process for developing a budget is in any way unfair or not well done, then I think we have to make sure that we have some oversight, which we do. You have somebody from your household who can be part of that. So I don't see how you can
We
stand
don't
back-
have oversight, because no matter how you vote while you're sitting on the Gilbert
I know,
School
but
Court, you're
making
in the
these- You're always
minority.
making the assumption that whatever they come up with is gonna be something that is unacceptable to you.
No, you're reading too much
It is not
into
possible
it.
in your mind for the Gilbert School to deliver a budget that says, this is what we need to educate the Winchester schools in an effective manner, and it's gonna cost X. And in your mind, that X will always be a wrong number because you do not have the authority to yea it or nay.
No, Doug, that's not what I'm saying.
I think
But
that's
what I
hear
am
every
saying
day.
is
That's
that it does not allow us to sit at that table on an equal basis to decide what does get cut that's in the best interest of our kids
That's-
as well as their kids.
You can have-
And that when we're talking about resources, bottom line is that the taxpayer is gonna say no, and guess what? Pre-K through 6 has to eat it, and when we ask them to share that cost, they say no. And they have said no, when we've asked them to share the burden, and they have said no.
And we're repeating ourselves, and it's 5 of 9.
Right.
And, I think,
get results.
Nora,
No,
you
it's
and I
not.
have a very similar position, but there are other members of this board as well. So, I think we should go one by one and see, or do a vote. Do we want to enter into contract negotiations? And I'd make a motion for us to enter into contract negotiations.
You're making that motion.
I'm making that motion.
Okay. All in favor of that?
Wait, I just need a second.
Second.
Okay, second. Okay, all in favor of entering into contract negotiations? Okay.
This
so-
is negotiations. It's not that we're getting a contract, it's to start the conversation.
So, and against? And abstentions? 2 abstentions. Okay. So we're gonna go forward, which means Melanie and Greg are gonna begin discussions. And they will receive input on limited issues, which I am gonna specify as arbitration. And we're going to deliver a contract proposal to this board for approval or not within what period of
I'm
time?
meeting with Greg tomorrow to let him know what has happened today. So
Okay.
I would say sometime probably February, March-ish.
I do want to say before this conversation is over that this is, in my behalf, no reflection on how people work very hard at Gilbert High School and the energy and the effort that's expended up there in that building. This has absolutely nothing to do with personnel, persons that are leading it, and any of those matters. It is not personal.
Correct.
And I want to make sure the public understands that. It has everything to do with the lack of legislation and the problems that it itself affects in terms of the economy and the way we pay for schools.
Doug, may I ask a clarifying question? At my suggestion to handle construction as its own entity, because I believe that's going to halt this process, I'd like to separate that out from the contract discussion.
Well, I think it's part of the contract, but it may be a separate agreement.
Like an MOU, but maybe not
That's-
at this same
Again,
time.
right now, I think we're agreeing for you two to proceed with having discussions, bring it back. I would ask that we accelerate the timeline as much as possible, considering everything else that's going on. You know, we have to have a budget to send to the town by a certain date. This will be a factor in that. You know, that, one of the most frustrating things I experienced was doing Gilbert contract negotiations and with my tenure on the board because of how they get dragged out. And there's no reason for that. I negotiate things on a daily basis. It's ridiculous the way the process has been in the past. So we can have a meeting of the minds on some issues, see what we can meet on the minds on. If we come to an agreement that meets the approval of both boards, then that would be great. But, you know, I don't see why it needs to take until March.
Senator Becker.
We'll work hard to make it happen.
Yeah, and recognizing you're doing your own budget, there's a lot going on. I recognize that. But I don't think this requires 4 or 5 meetings.
Right.
You know, the process where we'll give something, then we take something, the back and forth was just, it's the most absurd thing.
No, I don't think that's the intention at all. I think.
Who knows what the intention is?
Yeah.
I would like to see it be done expeditiously before you waste more time than you need to waste when you have got the other things to focus on. Because if all we're gonna do is get a bill in the end that we have to pay by statute, then we might better just deal with that.
Fair enough. Policies.
Oh, yeah, let's keep going.
It's all yours, Cheryl.
We have 2 policies that are for first read. We've discussed these controversial issues. One is student discipline at the last meeting.
I have a question about page 65. I think it's 65, it's cut off. Policy 6144C, letter E.
Hold on, page 65. So 65, where are you? E?
Under E, where it says intellectual balance, encouraging equal participation. Midway through that paragraph, it reads, if important viewpoints on a given issue are not expressed, they may be elicited through careful questioning, or they may be provided by asking students to role-play someone who would present that perspective. I'd like to delete that or provided, or may be provided by asking students to role-play someone who would present that perspective. That puts students in an awkward position.
Yeah.
Role-play often backfires, especially when you're talking pre-K through 6 of the school system. It's not fair to kids to put them in that position.
Anyone have any
I'd like to strike that.
comment on that?
It says may.
Yeah, but I'd still like to strike it.
Strike
it just puts the kids, let's try to do that today. And then it asks, who's gonna ask that kid to do it? And depending upon if peers ask that kids to do it, or a teacher asks the kids to do it, it's just putting them in an awkward position.
Does anyone have any comment on that suggestion?
I agree.
Yeah.
I like it.
All right, so do we have a motion to move this to second read with that clause removed?
That whole sentence.
Or said, no,
That-
there's that clause.
From
It says,
or to
they may-
perspective.
Or they may be
Or
provided.
to the end is a clause.
Does it make sense, with taking that sentence out?
Yeah, if important viewers on a given issue are not expressed, they may be elicited through careful questioning.
Period.
Period.
And I'm presuming careful questioning by the teacher.
Yes. if it's
Because
the
this is the
primary
teacher
role of the
clause.
This is talking about the teacher's
Right.
role.
Right.
So that would take out that. So do we have a motion to move this to second read, removing that clause, starting with, or they may be provided by asking students? Okay, Jeanette's made a motion. Do we have a second?
A second? Oh,
All
sorry.
right, all in favor? Okay,
Wait, what was the count on that?
that was unanimous.
Unanimous?
No, it wasn't.
I thought you,
Against.
okay, sorry. I thought you,
All
I
right.
thought you seconded. I was in my head.
No, so we had one against
No,
Barb.
Renee.
You're like, well,
Renee seconded.
Renee seconded.
I think that
second
removes an option for the teacher. Because it's may, it's not will, shall.
All right, so, sorry. All right, any other comment? So that's been moved, so then the next one for first read is the discipline one. Again, this is first read. We did go through, I think, a couple versions of this before we were settled on this in the policy meeting. Does anyone have any questions or comments? Do we have a motion to move it to second read? Okay, Tara first, anyone second?
Second, Chris?
Kristen, any further discussion? All in favor? Looks unanimous. Doug? Okay. Now, the rest of these policies are second read. This is the policy number 4218.232. This is the marijuana policy, I think, for better, lack of a better name right now. It's the personnel, alcohol, tobacco, and drug-free workplace policy. Does anyone have any questions or comments on this policy at this point? Do we have a motion to approve this policy? Your second read.
This is the second read, right?
This is second read.
Okay.
All right, I have Christian making the motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second. Nora?
Nora, all in favor? Looks unanimous to me. Renee, did you raise your hand?
Yes, I did.
Okay, all right. And this goes with, just to recount, this was with the, okay, now, what did I miss?
This is random 1120, regulations for.
Okay, that's right, policy, 1120. It's the next one, again, second read. This has to do with our public comment period.
Motion to approve.
Okay. We have a
Second.
All in favor?
Tara seconds.
Dora, you in favor?
Well, I'm just making sure I understand. This is 1120, replacing
Replaces that
R 1120.
It's a shorter version.
much shorter version, and it doesn't infringe on people's constitutional rights to speech in this.
It'll shorten every Board of Ed meeting by at least 20 minutes.
I do have a question, though. It doesn't say how long a person has the chance to speak. 3
will be
minutes?
It says you will be
allotted
allotted
3
3 minutes to share your comments.
And number
Where's
3.
that?
You appreciate your adherence to the
Under number
following:
3.
1, complete the forms; 2, state your name; 3, you will be allotted 3 minutes to share your comments. Middle.
There it is, number 3. Gotcha. Okay, thank
Okay.
you.
All right, do I have a motion?
I think we did it, right?
Did we do that? Oh, I thought she had a
We
question.
didn't vote.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, all in favor?
Yeah, we did.
Okay, we did now.
All right.
All right,
We didn't vote. You're right.
now we've got, this is the Narcan policy, essentially. Policy 5141.213. Any discussions, questions, comments, criticisms?
I will state that
Typos?
throughout the rest of these, advisor changes from E to O.
I didn't do that.
No, I know. I'm just stating that it really should be continuous. It's O in our policies, but in the reference to references or, you know, whatever these are, it tends to be an
The
E.
legal reference?
Yeah, so,
I think that's based on what those rules.
I mean, it should be, you know, honestly, the way, what advisor versus advisor, it's a small point, but it's an inconsistency.
It makes you crazy.
It does. And the second page, you might want to put a break after schools, 10 to 112A, because it's like supposed to be a list.
Oh, so,
That's my only,
you see
wait a
that
minute,
now?
I think.
It's doing the size, on the second page, the statutory citation of 10-212A, and then it goes into, run on into statutory citation 17A-714. That should, the 17A should be on a separate line. But then, so,
That's it.
because it's a separate thing. All right, considering the need to not make Kristen nuts, do we have a motion to approve this with the change in, creating the consistency on advisor?
I'll make a motion.
Second,
All in favor?
Nora.
unanimous?
Unanimous.
Dude, I just want consistency,
I know.
that's all.
Okay, and this comes with the regulation. So anyone concerned with that? We don't have to, that's a regulation that goes with the policy. We approve the policy, we approve the regulation. All right, then we've got the instruction policy 6144.1, has to do with curriculum in certain areas.
Exemption.
All right, so first line, substance abuse education is required by state statutes for all students annually, comma, and students are not exempt.
Right.
So that
That-
just means any particular kind of students, just,
All students, but it's gonna be at age level curriculum.
okay.
But they do have to have something, you know, we do
So
like the
there's
dairy program.
no exemptions.
There's no, that's not something that's an exemption. You can't exempt
Students
that.
cannot be exempt.
Correct.
Correct.
Okay. Dissection of animals, end of the first paragraph. After in, the comma needs to be removed, or add one after observe.
Section of animals.
Got it?
Okay. Anything else? Oh, she's got more ratings.
The next page,
77?
77, second paragraph, any student excused from any aspect of curriculum, it should be may be required by the teacher to complete an alternate assignment.
That's a big difference.
Yeah. The title of the next one, sexual abuse and assault awareness, and I believe it's supposed to be prevention program, because that's how it's listed below. And my understanding is the name of the department is Department of Children and Families, or is it just Department of Children?
No, that's Department of Children and Families, you're correct.
Okay.
Under dissection of animals, you said there has to be,
Remove a comma.
I added.
I think there needs to be a comma added, right?
I did add.
Either way,
Oh, okay.
either way.
I
I
think it has
added
to
one
be
after
added.
observe.
Yeah, I think we
How
took
about a
that would be
space
crazy.
too between the second and last
Yeah.
paragraph in dissection of animals?
And maybe divided into two.
Where are you at, Nora?
Anything else?
Here, any,
Between
in
any
this
student.
paragraph,
Alright.
any student, in the next paragraph exemptions, maybe a space?
With those suggested edits, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Nora?
All in favor? It's unanimous. Next policy is new construction indoor air quality policy 7230.2. Okay, this is a new mandatory policy coming out of the pandemic. This is second read. Any questions or concerns or comments or edits?
I would argue that number 10 is moisture intrusion versus incursion.
I think it goes both ways.
It can be, but incursion has a different meaning. It's more like a forceful. It's usually used in like political moves, war moves, things like that, where intrusion is usually much more commonly heard in things like moisture, construction, things like that.
So
It is a weird
I'm
word.
just saying, that's just my
It's a
suggestion.
strange word choice.
It
It
is.
certainly is.
It is. All right, any other comments, edits? So do I have a motion with that change of number 10 from incursion to intrusion?
I make the motion.
Second,
So moved.
Jeanette, all in favor?
Unanimous?
Doug?
Yeah.
Unanimous. All right, next policy is on 82, page 82, 6115.3. This is the flag policy. We had some significant discussions regarding this and decided to go with a very basic policy. Do I have any comments, edits, questions? Do I have a motion?
So moved.
I'll second.
Motion to approve, I assume? All in favor?
Unanimous?
Unanimous. Page 83, policy number 5141.3. This is one of the ongoing amended policies on health assessments and immunizations. This is a mandated policy. Any questions, comments, edits?
Third paragraph, Board of Education, stop it! I have to, I want to be sure we're doing it right.
I know,
Second,
appreciate it.
second sentence, it is a policy of the Board of Education to ensure, we cannot
Again.
ensure.
Okay, so E-N-S-U-R-E instead of I-N.
Yep, and then in the legal references, 10206A free health assessments, there's just an extra piece that doesn't belong after that, or you have to refer to
10 where?
10206A
10206,
free health assessments. I'm not sure if that's in reference to anything, or if it's just,
Okay, yeah, there's a free parens.
Taken out.
Open
Yep.
parens that needs to get taken out. Okay, with those edits, do we have a motion to move it, to approve?
So moved.
Second, Renee, all in favor? Tori? Abstention? Opposed? One opposition, Tori? Okay.
does this include the additional piece,
What additional, please?
starting at page 86? Health assessments, is that attached to that?
The regulations
That's
are
the
attached.
regulation, yeah, if you look at the prior, the things right there.
That's 91, I think.
Okay, because some point, grade 6 got run in together all the way through.
Okay.
Like there was some kind of a change, maybe somebody tried to adjust something.
Pagination, yeah.
What page are you on, Chris?
Starting with page 88, number 2, physical exam, and it's like the 5th line down.
Let's just note, there's grade 6 without a space. And
Yeah,
Got it. I see it.
It's like multiple times,
in
it's
that
in,
paragraph again.
yeah, it's twice in that paragraph, and it's on, oh.
On 89, under the paragraph that starts out with health assessments completed within one calendar year, it does it again. It's just a weird thing to repeat itself. I only see it the 3 times.
I only see it 3 times, yeah.
Where was the third one at?
The third one is on page 89.
Yep.
All right, what was on 89?
Oh, I see it,
Okay.
quarter of the way down the page.
Yeah. All right. Now, page 92, policy number 4118.11 is non-discrimination. This is one of the ongoing repeated, and we just amended in March. And this was supposed to add,
Domestic violence.
yay, it's in it now. Okay, so that's the only change in this policy that we just approved in last March, was adding, there's a new special classification, is domestic violence victims. Any questions, concerns, comments, edits?
All right, under the paragraph EEO.
Say what again?
Under the paragraph, the EEO paragraph. It starts going on race, color, religious creed, age, disability, comma, and then including pregnancy is on its own. So I recommend removing the comma before including pregnancy, because I'm thinking that's considered a disability. Otherwise, including pregnancy doesn't make any sense.
That's true, so the comma after disability should come out.
And after disability comes out.
Yeah,
If you look at later, there's physical disability, there's parens, including blindness, that's,
pregnancy, yeah. And then, below accommodation, veteran regarding any individual perform that reasonable accommodations, physical disability, there should be a comma inserted before physical disability.
accommodations, comma, physical
Yeah.
disability?
Yeah.
Including blindness and parentheses, comma, or other disability,
Yeah, that would be fine.
add a comma.
You're saying take out the parentheses also?
No.
No.
Leave them, okay.
No, just putting one after accommodations and between, accommodations and physical disability.
I think
And
the
then
period
she
comes
added
out of
another one.
parentheses too, right?
And then you have one
Yes.
more at the bottom,
Yep, and then there is,
the last sentence
the-
of the policy.
yeah, federal law, there's a
There's quotation marks
quotation marks that are just
hanging there.
hanging there.
So the quotation marks of the one that sentence.
Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah.
Delete quotation marks.
All right, with those proposed edits, do I have a motion to approve?
Does that include the form?
Yes.
Okay, so the form,
Uh-oh.
the form,
Problem.
let's go
Yeah.
back to if this is, based on race, color, blah, 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 sexual orientation, gender, identity, or expression, you need to remove the he, she, and
Ah.
leave it as they have.
Right.
First
Oh,
line.
there it is, first line. Okay.
Yeah, just today, that's,
And then there's, under name of presenter, complainant, get rid of that extra dash, and I think the line just goes too far.
Is it complainant or complainant? Complain.
complainant.
Complaining
But do you see that extra dash mark?
at the end.
Okay.
at the
Oh,
bottom.
yeah, it's an extension of that
Above the
line, yeah.
word circle one.
Kristen, including pregnancy pieces back in that one too.
Yeah, that's okay though, right? Because there's no,
There's no
Yeah,
comma
because, yeah, including pregnancy refers back to disability.
there. Yeah.
Right, so there's no parents, I mean, no parent,
no comma.
nothing. It's been a long day. All right. Do we have a motion to approve this last policy for the evening?
I make a motion to approve the last
We have a
policy of the evening.
second.
I'm just gonna try the
Nora
second.
seconds,
All right, all in favor?
unanimous.
Okay,
Thank you, Cheryl.
welcome.
There is no more public comment, since there's no member of the public, we can move right.
We've got executive session.
Oh, yeah, executive
I
session.
didn't, you didn't let me finish?
When do I have?
So we're moving on to executive session. I need a motion to go into executive session.
So moved.
And invite Mel, anyone else comes in?
Do we really need to leave the room?
Yes.
Yes.
We do.
So that's Tori made the
Thank you,
first,
Tara.
Renee second,
Tara.
Tori first, Renee second. All in favor of executive session, inviting Melanie at 9:16 PM. That's unanimous, so we go to executive session.
Yeah, they talked about like anticipated legislation.
You wanna get one?
Which was kind of interesting, like during that key.
How do I turn this off?
Anticipated, it was hard, but I was listening with one and trying to work. Yeah, they had some tech glitches and.
They were late, they were like, yeah. And then they kind of just read. what was on
I
the
just
sheet.
printed that out
I
and
did-
I'm like, this has a lot of good information on
But
it,
at the end,
so.
somebody asked a question about the anticipated legislation, which I thought was so
That was
good.
a good question.
I wrote it all down,
Yeah, that
so-
was a good question.
Cause that was the only. That was like the best part.
Well, I guess you never know, well, we can leave all that out here, right?
Yeah, we're gonna come back in. Just right. Yeah, sure, no. Thank you so much. Sure.
I was gonna offer it to you.
Gavel? I don't know, somebody was playing with the gavel.
Oh, no, I think it was my chairs. In there. I feel for you, by the way. Goodness. No judgment.
It's okay. Bye, guys. Good day. I think she just knows that I'm not feeling great, so I'm still not feeling good. Yeah, we're fine. Just to turn around and be back here in like 3 hours.
I know, I was gonna say, are you okay to drive?
Yeah, I'm fine. Yeah, I'm used to it. Yeah.
Well, I'm used to it and I'm not feeling good are two different things.
No. I'll be fine. Barb will take care of me.
Okay,
Barb,
good. Good,
Motion to come out of executive session.
Wait a minute. We're not all here yet. Okay, now we are.
Motion to come out of executive session.
Second.
All in favor?
Yay.
Motion to adjourn.
All right, hold on, let me turn off the computer.
Do I need to record that because Barbara's missing?
I can record it for her.
All right, thank you.